Top officials from the Trump administration, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, held a classified briefing on the U.S.-Iran conflict with senators on Tuesday. This comes as both chambers of Congress are set to vote on a war powers resolution to block the president from using further military force against Iran.
Many Democrat lawmakers appeared discouraged by what they heard at Tuesday's briefing. Here was Senator Richard Blumenthal expressing his concerns.
I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground and that troops from the United States may be necessary to accomplish objectives that the administration seems to have.
Now, those concerns were echoed by Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let's watch.
It is so much worse than you thought. You are right to be worried. Trump administration has no plan in Iran. This illegal war is based on lies, and it was launched without any imminent threat to our nation. Donald Trump still hasn't given a single clear reason for this war, and he seems to have no plan for how to end it either.
The Senate is expected to vote on the war powers resolution on Wednesday, followed by the House on Thursday. But even if the resolution were able to clear both chambers, President Trump could still veto it, and a two-thirds majority would be needed to override that veto.
Now, some Republicans did respond more positively to the latest updates. Senator Lindsey Graham even called for further action, urging President Trump to join Israel in conducting strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Here was Graham after the briefing.
President Trump, come up with a new operation called Simplify. Fly with Israel and go after Hezbollah, who has American blood on its hands. Not only take the mothership of Iran down, also take the proxy of Hezbollah, settle the score, even the account.
And just this morning, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave another update, making it clear that the administration has no plans of slowing down or stopping. Let's take a look at that.
More and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating. Iran's capabilities are evaporating by the hour, while American strength grows fiercer, smarter, and utterly dominant. The enemy can no longer shoot the volume of missiles they once did, not even close. And the chairman will lay out some of those percentages. So our air defenses and that of our allies have plenty of runway. We can sustain this fight easily for as long as we need to.
Meanwhile, the CIA is reportedly working with Kurdish forces in Iran with the hopes of sparking an uprising. An article from CNN says the Trump administration has been in active discussions with Iranian opposition groups and Kurdish leaders in Iraq about providing them with military support, the sources said. Iranian Kurdish armed groups have thousands of forces operating along the Iraq-Iran border, primarily in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Several of the groups released public statements since the beginning of the war, hinting at imminent action and urging Iranian military forces to defect. This war powers vote, I mean, again, this is backwards. It's not, right. The Senate should not be voting to stop a war. They're supposed to vote to authorize the war in the first place. So Trump can veto the war powers resolution, but if it's operating the way our framers intended, he wouldn't be acting at all, because we hadn't been attacked without congressional approval. I listened to Hegseth a little bit this morning. You were just saying you did the same, and I find myself very frustrated listening to him because he's describing these awesome, like a kid describing a Lego set, like, we blew up their stuff, it's amazing, boom, pow, wow. And like, what are you talking about? I know that we have an amazing Air Force. I know that our military capabilities are unmatched throughout the world. It is not, this is no miracle or surprise that we're able to precisely target and kill huge numbers of enemy, high-ranking enemy officials. But that has never before in history resulted in, on its own, the ouster of one government in favor of a government we preferred. That has always required ground forces. Unless you're about to tell me that we are going to precisely target and kill like every single person who holds any position of authority in the Iranian government down to the janitor, eventually someone is going to come in and helping the Kurds take over. That sounds like getting very involved.
Deeply involved
on something we didn't vote for and we didn't really discuss. And they didn't really attack us.
And you talked about Congress and skipping over them. That's how the U.S. law works, right? We're supposed to go through Congress.
Lindsey
to have
Graham
this.
hasn't even had enough of it. He
Yeah,
wants a
Lindsey
war
Graham
with
is like
Red Bull.
salivating. So watching that was like exactly what we talk about the old, you know, regime, the old guard versus the new guard. Nobody wants to be in endless wars, no matter which side of the aisle you fall on. You're seeing, for the most part, Elizabeth Warren with her perspective. You see Matt Walsh with his perspective. Even if they have two different targets, the end goal is that this is not something that we're interested in pursuing. So not only are we violating Congress by skipping over them, we're violating international law, because there's a big difference between a war of necessity and a war by choice. And so because there hasn't been a clear laid out plan of why we needed to act right now, I mean, now we're in an issue where we're having Turkish air being protected by NATO. And so what does that mean for us as far as not getting involved and not putting boots on the ground? How do we avoid that? We're like in too far deep now that we can't pull back and say, forget it. Even though people are saying, let's call for a ceasefire and try to fix this, I'm hearing a lot of conversation about the fact that Iran was not willing to come to the table and negotiate. And that is what the president and his administration are saying, that they weren't able to negotiate in good faith, and Jared Kushner went over there and tried their best. But the interesting thing is
And I see value, and frankly, I see value in that, because I hope the next person knows that if you don't play ball, you're going to get blown up. And there is a value in that.
Well, also, I wish that President Trump would have known that we have been in an Iran nuclear deal, which you say that he didn't like, but it still was stopping them from having 90% of that uranium. If we were so concerned about nuclear bombs, they didn't have the power to create one. And we stopped them, and it was largely effective to unbiased communities that oversaw this, including the president, who looked at it and said, yeah, technically they're abiding by this, before he ripped it up to shreds.
But that agreement was good for the current regime. And that agreement coming out of no longer being applicable has created a bad economic situation in Iran that is creating instability and dissatisfaction among the people. So having the agreement in place, that's why we need to understand the priorities. Because if we have agreement like that in place, it will stabilize the regime, because it will stabilize, it removes sanctions and creates favorable economic conditions.
Right.
Which is win for us, win for them. But so obviously we don't want that if our goal is to replace their government.
Creating nuclear
That's
weapons.
what I'm saying. So we have to know whether we just want the government out at all costs, in which case...
That's a regime change that we're saying we don't want.
In which case the Bush people were more honest about this. They made their case to the American people and to the rest of the world and got authorization for it. And we're just being dishonest about what we're doing. If it's really about stopping their nukes, but we don't really care if the regime stays in power, then yes, a deal is the main thing. If it's about defense of ourselves, I don't know. Marco Rubio said it one way. Hegseth is mostly just talking about how cool it is that everything's blowing up. And Trump has also been, it's confusing.
But you always talk about the fact that America has to negotiate or have conversations with countries that they wholly don't agree with. So Iran could fall on the list of those countries. And if the real goal is what we've been told for months, is that they're not coming to terms about nuclear capabilities, then we should not be taking this route. This doesn't make sense for a regime change, because the goal was already settled and they weren't making they weren't progressing nuclear capabilities. So now we took them back by ripping up that Iran nuclear deal and circled back to the point A, because they started trying to build nuclear weapons again, and now we're demolishing nuclear sites where they're trying to build and going back in a circle to make a deal that once existed in 2015. A new report alleges that the DOJ is removing tens of thousands of pages from the currently available Epstein files. We're going to talk about that. Don't go anywhere.